In today's video, we're going to be doing a really simple one. We're going to be breaking down what we typically break down. This is going to be the European model and the GFS model, as we do expect a major mid-Atlantic and northeast snowstorm coming up very soon, and maybe even some more cold and snowy conditions afterwards. Let's go ahead and dive into things, and we're taking a look at the European model first off. And as you can see, we're gonna just, this is a late night special, of course. We're gonna take this to tomorrow on Thursday the 8th, and you can see that we do have plenty of snowfall across the Rockies as this atmospheric river continues to throw storms on shore. We've been in this pattern for a while, and we do actually expect this to eventually come to an end as we see the cold redirected at the east later on down the road. As we mentioned, we do actually have a pretty major low pressure system also for the upper Midwest, northern plains as well here. So that's the northern plains there, upper Midwest as well, and then south central Canada experiencing some snowfall and rainfall depending on where you're at due to this system. As we keep going towards Friday here, on the 9th, as I kind of just overwent that. I went past it a little bit, but we can see there's still some snowfall showers left over, especially in the northern regions of the West. We see mountains like the Cascades here, and also the northern Rockies getting involved in some snowfall showers there, as we have a weaker low developing over Kansas. Underneath it, we do have some thunderstorm development happening in Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, Tennessee, Alabama, and Georgia there. Definitely some active conditions down that way. And as we reach towards Saturday here on the 10th, we see things building up as a lot of this cold has moved further inland as it's getting ready to transition eastward by this point. Again, we've mentioned time and time again about the 10th being that transition date, and sure enough, we still expect that, as we've mentioned that very long ago. Actually, we have a lot of moisture. We can actually see the stream of moisture kind of entering in from the Gulf here into this storm system, and that is definitely helping to amplify things. Your jet stream's very close by, and as this all moves eastward, we're going to see this really get amplified here. We actually do have some warmer air already starting to introduce itself here into the west coast as a positive PNA. We also have some high pressure up here to the north, so higher pressure, warmer temperatures. That's definitely going to force this cold air to move eastward, and therefore force this warm air out to sea there, and that's going to be the perfect setup for a major snowstorm that we expect here. By the time we're reaching the next day here on Sunday, the 11th, we see the beginning of this storm system, 1002 weaker low pressure system over Texas and Louisiana. This is presenting itself as a lot of thunderstorm activity nearby that low. Also underneath it into the east here, we see thunderstorms throughout these areas. And then we see snowfall from northern Texas here, a lot of central northern Oklahoma there, plenty of southern Kansas, and some of southern Missouri. This is looking classic for this winter, as we've had a lot of systems start out this way, and we have some deeper south central snowfall occurring. And actually, this is a perfect opportunity to mention it, but I do expect this to be very in line with a lot of what we've seen this season, and I'll mention that a little bit earlier on and really dive into it with you guys. But as we keep going here, we can see by the next day here on Monday the 12th, we see a 992 somewhere near northern West Virginia here, with some snowfall across the Ohio Valley into portions of the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast. We will take a look at the GFS model in just a little bit, and that's going to have a little bit more of a snowy solution, so we do have a little bit of some differing opinions. The good news is they both have a very strong low pressure system moving offshore of New England here and bringing some sort of Northeast and Mid-Atlantic snowstorm. And I say good news not because this major system is happening. I'm saying good news because we do have agreement, and that's important here because we're getting more accurate information when these models are all on the same page, as opposed to them being all over the place and us having to kind of guess which one is correct. We obviously prefer to see a setup here where we can have good information further out, and this is one of those systems where there is good agreement just, a few days out. This lowers all the way down to a 976, so I'd say the differing thing here is not only does it actually continue to stay near the coast as opposed to these previous storms we've had, where they've mostly head south from this point and really dropped off the snowfall totals in the end. But not only that, we have a much stronger low here as a 976 than we've seen with a lot of these systems. But the kind of moving up this way and then transferring offshore and then moving up is pretty much in line with most of our major snow systems we've seen here in the east this season. And what that's telling me is we should have a little bit more confidence in this than we typically would. This has been a part of our, winter this so far, and we've seen a lot of systems like this, and that kind of bodes well for the confidence overall for me. We do see that there is warmer conditions across the Southwest, still some high pressure over the Southern Rockies, and this is still helping a lot of this cold to move eastward. We do still see some of it presenting itself over the Northwest as well. I think that's worth mentioning. As we reach towards Friday afternoon, or better yet, Tuesday afternoon on February 13th, we see that low finally coming to an end. We're left overall with a quieter pattern. Most of our storminess after the 13th here is in the northwest or the north central states, where we see a lot of systems moving over top of this high pressure area that's presenting itself here. So that's forcing everything to go over it. Obviously, we know low pressure does not head towards high pressure. It's a lot like oil and water where they avoid each other. So when you see high pressure setting up over the southwest, we expect to see a lot of this low pressure to move over or underneath like this, and we can see precipitation over it, and we see precipitation under it. So we can see it happening on screen here, where it's really vigorously avoiding that high pressure area, which is to be expected in situations such as this. We can see that as we move this on, we do actually get a little bit of a minor snow system on this model around Friday the 16th here for the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. Still cold in the east overall compared to the west. And we actually kind of leave off here at the end of this model run at a very good point. We still have a lot of warmth to work with here in the west. Positive P&A as a result of that. So all of this cold is pouring into the central and the eastern states. And then we actually have a lot of low pressure forming and storminess here. You can see over the south central, and we can only imagine that this is going to be primed to head into this cold air as they've been doing. So we're actually left off at a pretty good point here at the end of this model run. Now, the GFS model run, we're just going to skip all the way to this upcoming storm around the 13th time frame. We see it's presenting itself in a very similar way. We see this low near Texas and Oklahoma, snowfall developing over Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas, Missouri. Same story here, maybe a little further north. But as time moves on, we see this low actually stays a lot further south. We still have the same cold air to work with here, as you can see in this area. And we have a 995 over Virginia and North Carolina. Once we move ahead a couple of hours here, this is by early on Tuesday the 13th, but as we head towards maybe 9 to 12 p.m., 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. here, we see this low is in a similar position, but we actually see a lot more southern snowfall, a lot of heavier snowfall in this, as that low is already down to a 987. Rapidly, that low moves down to a 995, very close to Cape Cod there by this point at about 8 p.m. on Tuesday the 13th. Very heavy snowfall presenting itself again in that northeast corridor and portions of the mid-Atlantic. So great agreement. We're not too far off on the location of the low here. I would say we're within 50 miles at most points here, which is really, really good agreement for a storm that's about 5 or 6 days out. So good agreement thus far. Still some uncertainty there. Wouldn't consider this a sure thing yet, of course, but definitely we're as confident as we can be at this range because of that model agreement and that other contributing factor where it looks exactly like we've seen a lot of these storms shape up to be. So definitely that similarity is boding well for my confidence, as I mentioned earlier. Now we get extra range here on this GFS model, and look, right at about hours 240, this is amazing as well. We have this cold air just like the European model presenting itself. And also we have that low pressure and lots of storminess across the south central states. So let's see what this one does as we get all the way to 15 days on this model. We get a little further out. And just as I said, it moves northward into that cold. We actually are seeing a very potent Arctic air mass over the east at this point. And we start to see snowfall for areas like Tennessee, Kentucky, portions of Virginia, North Carolina, West Virginia, Ohio, Pennsylvania. So a little bit more of a southeast and mid-Atlantic snowstorm here. That's on Sunday the 18th. And as we head towards that afternoon, evening time, we have a classic nor'easter setup. 998, not the strongest low, but we definitely have moderate to heavy snowfall in this corridor from Virginia up through DC and Maryland, Delaware, eastern Pennsylvania, areas in New Jersey, and into southern New England there. So definitely a very intense system, more coastal in that case. And then we actually get some deeper south stuff. Take this with a grain of salt. The GFS is really, really known for doing this, so I want you guys to really pay close attention to that. But we have some low pressure developing very far to the south and also cold presenting itself very far southward. So take this with a grain of salt, to say the least. I don't think this is going to happen in the long range. We always it draws red flags when you see the GFS showing this. We have a brief East Coast warm up here, but already colder air is back on the way to the east. So we do still anticipate a 10th and beyond cool down with no end in sight, which should be good news for you cold and snow lovers out there. Now the total precipitation, we see plenty for the Northwest, is again high pressure ends up setting up pretty soon here in the Southwest. So a lot of our precipitation is going to be moving up through this area and also underneath into the east. avoiding this circled in area here that I'm drawing. So it's going over top and underneath that. Clearly we can see this on the precipitation. Total snowfall in the European model, again, we don't get that final snowstorm there, but for the west we see plenty of snowfall, even for the southwest, because they're pulling in some snowfall before that high pressure system sets up. But I do want to zoom into the northeast here, where we do see that major snowstorm taking place. And look, it's a very far northern and interior solution here for the European model, I would say. We're seeing a majority of the snowfall spreading from the mountains of West Virginia up through mostly north central Pennsylvania, near the Finger Lakes here of New York, into the Adirondacks, Green Mountains, White Mountains, and eventually into Maine. And that's the area that we're watching for 10 inches plus, potentially a foot plus in a lot of these pink areas. Now, once we take a look here at the GFS model, we see we get 2 snowstorms, a lot in the west. Again, we're adding 5 days here. The European model runs for 10 days. The GFS model actually gives us 15 days, so this is a longer period of time, hence the increase in snowfall out west. But we actually get 2 snowstorms in this time frame on the east, and I suspect the European was very close to showing something if the European did go out to 15 days, which again, it does not, so it's all speculation, but it looked pretty on par with what the GFS model showed up to that point. Didn't mean to zoom into the northwest there. Let's zoom into the northeast. We see for snowstorm number 1 here, we actually get a lot more, especially when you're looking at southern New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts. We're getting a lot more further south as opposed to this European model, where we don't hardly get anything in those areas. The GFS model is saying no, there's going to be a lot of snowfall, and actually this model ends up making this a much more major snowstorm, as we're not talking about 10 inches plus, we're potentially talking about 20 inches plus in a lot of these pastels, so about double the snowfall totals. But again, the location isn't too far different. It's mostly that intensity and the amount of snowfall that we're seeing differing amounts. But if you're picking up on what the trend is here between both models, is a major snowstorm seems to be very likely here. It's just a difference of 10 or 20 inches in the bullseye, which either way, I think anybody would consider that a major snowstorm, but certainly 20 inches plus is going to be something very, very substantial if that does occur. I will update you guys daily on all of this. Keep in mind, I've had a little bit of a hiatus here again, as my mom's health and spending time with family has been at the forefront of my mind here for a couple of days. Wanted to get this video out today for you guys. Continue to pray for my mom, as we've still been kind of up and down with this mental struggle. And, you know, I do appreciate the GoFundMe so much, and that has helped out significantly. And we are still on the path and journey to getting her help. If you've ever had a family member or a loved one go through mental health issues, I'm sure you fully understand what my family is going through right now. And I sympathize with all of you, whether you're currently going through it or have gone through it before. It is probably the most trying thing that has ever happened in my life. And it's not even happening to me, it's my mom. But certainly one of the most difficult things I can imagine ever. Please subscribe. Also, as you know, we're going to continue to upload these videos as much as I can. I wish I could say daily, but lately that has not been the case. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload, so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it, leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.